lot of lady baboons, rather like our friend the gorilla. The lady baboons got very flirtatious, and they began to make obvious signs of what they thought of us and what they thought we should do, and so on and so forth. And the male baboons got frightfully angry about this and began to charge, and so we had to retreat because we hadn't got any guns to defend ourselves. And we had a confrontation with these sort of apes for quite a long time before they pushed off. And we then realized that they had not seen human beings before. And next day, this was confirmed when, of all things, a leopard walked into the camp, rather like a Labrador dog, and simply looked around and looked at us and sniffed, and then walked off again. And so we were the first men to go onto this area, and we saw later on dragonflies and frogs and so on. And they clearly must have some water somewhere in that mountain, but we couldn't find it.
What about these elephants that you discovered living underground? Was that in the same area?
That was a little farther away on the Ugandan border. There was a story that there were elephants living in the middle of a mountain. And we very quickly found this was true. And going into these caves, we heard a rumbling sound. And when you're in a cave, you don't really want to hear rumbling. And we were rather relieved to discover that the rumbling was coming from the stomachs of these elephants, who were mining salt inside the cave with their tusks, and then snuffing it up with their trunks and blowing it into their mouths. And this salt was acting rather as an emetic, and their stomachs were sort of rumbling, and it was actually the elephant's stomach rumbling and not the cave falling down apart. Well, what we then did was to build a path and an observation platform, and to allow tourists one day to go in there and see this unique site, which I believe is only found in Kenya.
Yes. But these extraordinary stories you tell, has anybody ever tried to make feature films out of them, or fiction?
Well, there are films, yes indeed, we have films being made at the moment of Operation Drake, and of course we're very much looking to the future with the young people who are coming back from Drake.
How dangerous is it, though? I mean, it seems that they are in the middle of a jungle or somewhere like that. I mean, really how dangerous it is. It frightens the hell out of me just thinking about it.
I think we're probably prepared for danger, and therefore it's less dangerous than, say, you might be crossing the street on a busy day in London when you're not thinking about being run down. If you're prepared, you have very few accidents, but there are risks, and we had problems with sharks in Panama, and we had problems, one chap got bitten by a snake. Admittedly, he was trying to catch it in Papua New Guinea, and of course, malaria is always a hazard, and I always think that the most dangerous animal in the whole jungle is the mosquito, because that attacks you without provocation, without warning, and it can kill you just as easily as some other things.
What precautions do you take as a part of the routine or system when you're living in the jungle? Is there a daily routine that you have to go through with your body and everything to...
Oh, certainly, yes. You must remember, in the jungle, of course, the jungle eats you at the same time as you're living on the plants and the berries and sometimes the animals and the birds. And naturally, you have to pick off all the ticks and the creatures that get on your body, and you have a sort of system of inspection whereby you line each other up, take all your clothes off, and have a good look over to see how many things have actually accumulated on you during the day.
And how do you get rid of them?
Or a cigarette end, or in a real case of a stubborn tick, you use an eyeglass full of vodka, and you've heard about being as tight as a tick. That's where the saying comes from.
Well, the alcohol just sort of burns them off, does it?
Well, they get inebriated and fall off, and then...
Have you ever had any desire to be an explorer at all?
Oh, I'm so fascinated with all this. I mean, it just makes me want to give everything up and join. I would love it. I'm a great traveler, and I was just in Kenya this summer, and I went up to Lake Turkana where they have, I think there's the biggest circulation or whatever of crocs there. Did you see those old crocs up in the...
Yes, indeed. Yes,
oh,
some of them are back in this country now. We've lost them.
I have a great desire to travel, and I really do believe that if I wasn't doing what I am doing now, I would probably be an anthropologist or something.
Will you rough it, though, like John does? Or
well, I've been asking myself this question for the last 10, 15, 12 minutes, something like that. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I'm not very brave.
I don't think we're too uncomfortable. Any fool can be uncomfortable. We always try to travel reasonably well, but there are times when sometimes one's personal comfort has to take second place, but it's all worth it when you come back and talk about it afterwards.
Yeah. It's not the comfort that worries me, really, because I don't need to be comfortable. It's the fear. It's the jumping over the hole, wondering if I'm going to land on the other side or not, you know.
Mm-hmm. What also, talking about comfort, I mean, you followed in the footsteps of some of the great explorers from a century or more ago. What kind of insight does it give you, with all the modern technology you've got and knowledge, into what they must have gone through 100 years ago?
I think you have a tremendous admiration for men like Livingston and Stanley, and indeed Drake, because what they went through at that time must have been sheer hell. And today, we've only got to be sick and we can go to a doctor. You've only got to feel ill and you can go to a hospital. But even in the expeditions I've been on, we've had men who have been taken very, very seriously ill, 1,000 miles away. And I remember on one particular occasion, we had an officer who has been with me many times, who was suddenly struck down, rushed into a sort of makeshift hospital. The doctor started to operate, and they said to me at midnight, he's dying. And there was nothing I could do. The aircraft I had hadn't got the range, and even if it had, he wouldn't have got there. And I went in to see him. He was lying on a table, and he was having a spinal anesthetic, which means you're conscious throughout the operation. And there were tubes sticking out of him all over the place. And he came from Yorkshire, which I know you'll appreciate. And he looked up at me, and whilst they were digging around in his stomach, he said, have you noticed something about these surgeons? Because he said one of them, as he pointed out, is an eye surgeon from Auckland in New Zealand, and the other's a gynecologist from Swindon. I do hope they've reached a compromise when they're working.
What's next, or indeed what's left, Jhon, for you to do?
There's a great deal left. I'm sure now that what we've got to go on doing is inspiring these young people. Because if we want to communicate with young people today, the two vital things are communication and inspiration, and the best people to do it are the young. We've now trained up an army of young explorers from all over the world, and particularly here in Britain. What they need is help and encouragement, and for the rest of my life, I'm going to spend it trying to raise money and raise support to keep these young going, because otherwise I'm going to die a very old and very disappointed man.
Oh, I think it's great.
Jhon Blashford-Snell, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.